The alien queen proposed marriage to me because I saved her reputation. The galactic summit hall was built to intimidate. Its ceiling stretched like an artificial sky, filled with slow-moving lights that represented the stars of every known empire. The floor was smooth black crystal, reflecting the figures standing upon it so that everyone looked as though they were walking on space itself. Thousands of delegates stood in layered circles, ranked by power, age, and influence. The oldest civilization stood closest to the center. Newer species were pushed toward the outer rings. Humans stood almost at the edge. Elias Morgan adjusted the simple collar of his diplomatic uniform. It was plain compared to the elaborate armor robes, glowing sigils, and floating banners worn by others. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 12 years ago. They were still considered fragile, emotional, and politically harmless. Elias had learned to live with that assumption. At the center of the hall stood Queen Zyralith of the Viorlian Dominion. She was tall even by alien standards, her form elegant and sharp, her skin shimmering like dark glass under starlight. Her crown hovered above her head, made of light rather than metal, a symbol of royal authority recognized across half the galaxy. She stood perfectly still, her posture calm, but Elias noticed the tension in her eyes. Viorlians did not show fear easily. When they did, it meant the danger was real. The High Arbiter of the Council floated forward, its many eyes narrowing as its voice echoed through the chamber. "Queen Zyralith of Viorlia," it said, "you are accused of violating the neutral expansion accord by secretly supporting illegal colony movements in the Ashen Belt." A low ripple of sound moved through the hall. Accusations like this were not made lightly. The Ashen Belt was contested territory. Any violation could justify sanctions, loss of trade rights, even military response. Zyralith spoke calmly. "The accusation is false. The Viorlian Dominion has obeyed every clause of the accord." A new figure stepped forward. Lord Keithrax of the Thal Dominion, massive and armored, his voice heavy with confidence. "Evidence suggests otherwise. Data from intercepted supply routes shows Viorlian signatures." Holographic displays appeared in the air. Charts, routes, symbols. To many in the hall it looked convincing. Elias felt his stomach tighten. He had reviewed similar data before, something about it felt wrong. The council murmured, some delegates nodded. Others watched silently, calculating advantage. Queen Zyralith did not raise her voice. "Those signatures are public standard encryption. They can be copied by any empire with basic access." Lord Keithrax laughed. "An excuse. Your reputation for honor is well known, Queen, but even legends can fall." That was the true weapon, reputation. In the Viorlian culture, reputation was not just pride. It was legal standing, social trust, and moral authority combined. To stain it publicly was to weaken the entire dominion. Elias watched as the High Arbiter tilted slightly. "The Council will consider the evidence unless a counter-argument is presented." Silence followed. No one wanted to challenge the Thal Dominion. They were ancient, powerful, and ruthless with political enemies. Elias felt the pressure in the air, thick and heavy. Humanity's own advisors had warned him before the summit. Observe, do not interfere. But Elias could not ignore what he saw. He replayed the data in his mind. The supply routes overlapped in a way that made no logistical sense. The timestamps were too clean, too perfect. It was staged, his pulse quickened. Speaking now would draw attention. A human challenging a major empire would be seen as arrogance or foolishness. Humanity could lose years of progress in one sentence. Elias thought of Earth. Of how humans had survived not by strength but by questioning assumptions. He stepped forward. The sound of his boots against the crystal floor echoed louder than he expected. Several delegates turned in surprise. Some looked confused, others looked amused. The High Arbiter's eyes focused on him. "Identify yourself?" "Elias Morgan," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Human diplomatic observer." A murmur passed through the hall. A human, speaking. Lord Keithrax sneered. "This is not a matter for lesser species." Elias did not respond to the insult. He bowed slightly toward the Arbiter and then toward Queen Zyralith. "With respect, I believe the evidence presented contains inconsistencies." The hall grew quieter. "Inconsistencies?" the Arbiter asked. "Yes," Elias said. "The supply routes shown overlap at 3 nodes that are gravitationally unstable during the stated time frame. No fleet, Viorlian or otherwise, would risk passage there." Additionally, the encryption markers match a public template released 80 cycles ago, not the updated Virelian standard. He paused, then added carefully, "In short, the data appears constructed to accuse, not record." The silence became absolute. Queen Zyralith turned her head slightly, her gaze locking onto Elia's. For the first time, her calm mask cracked just a little. Lord Keithrax's expression hardened. "You accuse the Thal Dominion of fabrication." "I accuse the data of being flawed," Elias replied. "And flaws deserve examination." The Arbiter hesitated. It gestured, and the holograms shifted. Analysis streams ran. The Council waited. Seconds stretched. Then the Arbiter spoke. "The human observer's claims are statistically valid." A wave of shock rippled through the hall. "The encryption discrepancy is confirmed," the Arbiter continued. "The route overlap contradicts safe navigation models. The evidence cannot be considered conclusive." Lord Keithrax roared in anger, his armor flaring. "This is manipulation, a trick." "Enough," the Arbiter said sharply. "The accusation is withdrawn pending further investigation." Just like that, it was over. Queen Zyralith's reputation was intact. Elias felt his legs weaken with delayed fear. He stepped back, heart pounding. He had done it. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. Around him, reactions varied. Some delegates looked thoughtful, others looked furious. A few watched Elias with new interest. Queen Zyralith faced the council once more. "Justice has been served," she said. "The Virelian Dominion thanks the council for its wisdom." Her eyes flicked briefly toward Elias before she turned and left the central platform, her entourage flowing behind her like living shadows. The summit moved on, but nothing felt the same. Later, in a quiet observation corridor overlooking the starfield, Elias stood alone, trying to calm his thoughts. He knew consequences would come. He just did not know what kind. Footsteps approached, light but deliberate. He turned. Queen Zyralith stood a few meters away, without guards, without ceremony. Up close, she was even more imposing. Power radiated from her not as threat, but as certainty. "Human," she said. Elias straightened instinctively. "Your Majesty." "You spoke when silence was safer," she said. "Why?" Elias considered lying. He decided not to, because the truth mattered. Her eyes studied him. "Do you understand what you saved today?" "Your reputation," he said. She nodded slowly. "In Virelian law, reputation is life. Without it, a ruler cannot lead, command, or protect." Elias swallowed. "I didn't know the full weight of it." "You still chose to act," she said. "That choice binds us." He frowned slightly. "Binds us?" She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming yet controlled. "A life debt exists now, one recognized by our oldest codes." Elias felt a chill. "I didn't intend." "Intent does not erase consequence," she said calmly. "The galaxy will remember that a human defended a queen when empires stayed silent." She turned toward the stars. "And I will repay the debt." Elias watched her walk away, his mind racing. He had come to the summit as an observer. He was leaving as the spark of something far larger and far more dangerous. The news spread faster than Elias expected. By the time he returned to the human delegation quarters, his name was already circulating through private channels, whispered in encrypted messages and cautious conversations. A human had challenged a major empire. A human had been right. For many species, that was more disturbing than any military movement. Elias sat alone in his small assigned room, staring at the stars beyond the transparent wall. Earth's blue glow was nowhere in sight. Out here, humanity was a rumor trying to become a fact. A soft chime sounded. "Enter," Elias said. The door slid open, and Ambassador Renata Cole stepped inside. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp with concern. "You caused a ripple," she said without greeting. Elias exhaled slowly. "I thought you might say that." "The Thal Dominion filed 3 formal objections," Renata continued. 2 minor coalitions requested briefings on human data analysis methods, and 1 invitation came directly from the Virelian Royal Office. Elias looked up. "Invitation?" Renata nodded. "Private audience." "Immediate?" His chest tightened. "That was fast." "Queens don't wait," Renata said. She studied him for a moment. "Do you regret speaking?" Elias thought back to the silent hall, to Queen Zyralith's eyes when the truth surfaced. "No," he said, "but I know this isn't over." Renata gave a thin smile. "Good, because nothing ever is." The Virelian audience chamber was unlike the summit hall. It was smaller, quieter, and designed not to intimidate but to reveal. The walls shifted slowly, showing living images of Virelian history. Alliances formed, wars avoided, rulers standing before their people not as gods, but as guardians. Elias stood alone at the center. No guards, no weapons, just a soft field humming beneath his feet. Queen Zyralith entered without announcement. She wore no crown this time. Her presence was still commanding, but less formal, more personal. "You arrived promptly," she said. "I didn't want to risk offending royalty twice in one cycle," Elias replied carefully. Something like amusement flickered across her face. "Sit," she said, gesturing. They sat across from each other, separated by a low, glowing table. For a moment, neither spoke. "You saved more than my reputation," Zyralith said at last. "You disrupted a pattern." Elias frowned slightly. "What pattern?" "The pattern of silence," she replied. "For centuries, smaller voices have stayed quiet when larger ones accuse. You broke that rule." "I wasn't trying to make a statement," Elias said. "I just saw a flaw." "That," she said, "is exactly what makes it dangerous." She activated the table. Images appeared, political alignments, shifting influence lines, probability forecasts. Elias recognized the models. They were far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. "Your action changed these outcomes," Zyralith said. "Not because of your strength, but because of your intent." Elias studied the projections. In several, humanity's influence grew sharply after the summit. "That's not what we want," he said honestly. Her gaze sharpened. "Explain." "We don't want to rule," Elias said. "We don't want fear-based influence. Humans make mistakes, a lot of them, but we survive by correcting them together." Zyralith leaned back slightly. "A rare philosophy." "Or a desperate one," Elias replied. Silence followed, heavy but not hostile. "In Virelian culture," Zyralith said slowly, "when someone preserves the standing of a ruler before the galaxy, they take on part of that ruler's burden. It is not optional." Elias felt a familiar chill. "You mentioned a life debt." "Yes," she said, "and life debts must be balanced." He chose his words carefully. "I don't want payment or power or protection." "That," she said, "is unfortunate." Elias blinked. "Unfortunate?" "It limits my options," Zyralith replied calmly. Before he could respond, the chamber lights dimmed slightly. A signal pulsed across the room. "Reports are coming in," she said. "The Thal Dominion is quietly discrediting you, suggesting manipulation, claiming humans are being used as proxies." Elias clenched his jaw. "So it begins?" "Yes," she said, "and it will not stop unless addressed." "What do you plan to do?" Elias asked. "I plan to repay my debt," Zyralith said. The words carried weight, finality. She rose, and Elias followed instinctively. "You will return to your delegation," she said. "For now." "For now," he echoed. "The galaxy needs time to adjust," she said, "and so do you." Back in the human quarters, tension hung thick in the air. Analysts worked around the clock. Diplomatic channels lit up with cautious inquiries. Humanity was no longer invisible. Elias briefed Renata on the meeting, omitting nothing. "A life debt," Renata repeated softly. "That's not a small thing." "No," Elias agreed, "and I don't think it ends with favors." Renata leaned against the table. "Elias, you understand that any deep tie with a major empire will reshape humanity's future." "I do," he said. "That's what scares me." Days passed, then weeks. The attacks came quietly, false reports, questioned motives. Subtle suggestions that humanity was unstable, unpredictable, dangerous in its honesty. Elias became a symbol without trying to be one. Then the summons came. This time it was public. The Galactic Council reconvened, not for judgment, but for announcement. Every major empire sent representatives. Curiosity burned brighter than hostility. Elias stood beside the human delegation as Queen Zyralith stepped forward. Her voice carried across the hall. "Cycles ago," she said, "my honor was challenged. Silence ruled the chamber." "Except for one." Eyes turned toward Elias. "A human spoke," she continued. "Not for gain, not for power, for truth." Murmurs spread. "In Virelian law," she said, "such an act creates obligation. I will not ignore our oldest codes." Elias felt his heartbeat in his ears. "I therefore declare my intent to bind the Virelian dominion to humanity through formal union." The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, shocked silence, furious whispers. Elias stood frozen. Formal union, marriage, not personal, political, symbolic, immense. Queen Zyralith raised a hand and the noise fell. "This proposal is not ownership," she said. "It is recognition. Humanity stands not beneath us, but beside us." All eyes turned to Elias. He felt the weight of 1,000 civilizations pressing down on one human heart. He had saved a queen's reputation. Now the galaxy wanted to see what humanity would do with the future she had placed in their hands. The reaction was immediate and violent, though no weapons were drawn. The galactic hall did not explode with sound this time. Instead, it filled with something far worse, fear wrapped in calculation. Delegates leaned toward one another, whispering urgently. Ancient empires that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly treated one human like a dangerous variable that refused to stay small. Elias stood still, his hands at his sides, his mind struggling to keep up with what had just been declared. He had known the debt would be serious. He had not imagined this. Marriage, not romance, not affection. Power. Queen Zyralith remained calm as chaos rippled outward. Her posture was steady, her gaze unshaken. She had not asked permission from the council. She had informed them. Lord Keithrax of the Thal Dominion was the first to break the silence. "This is manipulation," he thundered. A calculated move to elevate a minor species into protected status. The council must reject this insult to balance. The High Arbiter did not respond immediately. Its many eyes moved between Zyralith and Elias. "The proposal has legal standing," it finally said. "Viralian internal law allows such a union. Council authority does not extend to forbidding it." That answer cut deeper than any weapon. Elias felt every gaze turn toward him. Some saw opportunity, others saw threat. A few saw something unsettling, hope. The session ended without resolution. It could not continue. Too many assumptions had shattered. Escorted back to the human delegation quarters, Elias felt the pressure fully land. Security doubled. Private channels flooded with requests, warnings, demands. Ambassador Renata Cole closed the door behind them and activated every privacy field available. "Sit," she said firmly. Elias obeyed. For a long moment, Renata said nothing. Then she laughed once sharply, without humor. "Do you understand what just happened?" she asked. "I think so," Elias replied. "Humanity just became untouchable or a target." "Yes," Renata said. "Both." She leaned forward. "That proposal ties us to a dominant empire without a single shot fired. Some will see protection, others will see a threat to the old order." "I didn't ask for this," Elias said quietly. "I know," Renata replied. "That's what makes it powerful." Outside human quarters, reactions were far less calm. The Thal Dominion began its response within hours. Diplomatic channels released carefully worded statements questioning human neutrality. Analysts suggested that humanity's emotional nature made them unreliable partners. Old footage of human conflicts was quietly circulated. Other empires were more subtle. Trade coalitions sent offers of support. Intelligence blocks asked for meetings. Smaller species sent messages of gratitude and curiosity. They had seen a human stand where they never could. Elias became less of a man and more of an idea. Queen Zyralith watched it all from the Viralian command spire. Advisors surrounded her, projecting risk matrices and outcome trees. "Opposition probability rising," one said. "Assassination risk increasing," another warned. "Council fracture likely within 4 cycles." Zyralith listened, unmoving. "They will not strike directly," she said. "Not yet, they will test the human." As if summoned by her words, reports arrived. An attempted smear campaign escalated into something more dangerous. A false accusation emerged, claiming Elias had manipulated council data with unauthorized human software. It was elegant, damaging, and completely false. The council announced an inquiry. Elias was summoned. The chamber was smaller this time, closed, no audience. Just the Arbiter selected representatives and Elias standing alone in the center. The accusation was read aloud. Elias did not interrupt. When asked to respond, he spoke simply. "Humans don't hide behind perfection," he said. "If I had manipulated data, it would leave traces." "I invite full inspection." The Thal representative smiled thinly. "Bold words," he said. Queen Zyralith rose from her seat. "The human speaks truth," she said. "And I will add this. Any attempt to damage him is an attempt to damage me." The room chilled instantly. The Arbiter reviewed the evidence. The false claim collapsed under scrutiny, exposed as fabricated by a third-party intelligence group tied too loosely to Thal interests. The inquiry ended quickly, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer free to be ignored. After the hearing, Elias found himself walking beside Zyralith through a quiet corridor overlooking a blue-white star. "You did not have to defend me," he said. "I did," she replied. "The bond exists whether you accept it or not." He hesitated. "Do you regret it?" She stopped walking. "Regret," she said slowly, "is a luxury of those who react. I act." She turned to face him fully. "You are not what the galaxy expected," she said. "You did not seek advantage. You did not posture. You endured." Elias met her gaze. "Humans have had a lot of practice." For the first time, she smiled openly. Days turned into weeks. Pressure mounted. Then something unexpected happened. Human diplomats began to succeed. Conflicts stalled for decades suddenly found common ground when humans mediated. Their lack of ancient grudges made them effective. Their honesty unsettled liars. Their willingness to admit fault disarmed aggression. The galaxy noticed. Smaller species openly aligned with humanity, not militarily but diplomatically, advisory roles, mediation councils. Joint problem-solving, power shifted without fleets moving. The Thal Dominion grew uneasy. A final move was planned. During a routine transit between council facilities, Elias' transport was subtly diverted. No alarms, no weapons, just silence and sudden isolation. The ship stopped near a dead moon. Internal systems locked. Elias understood immediately. This was not assassination, it was removal. Before panic could take hold, the ship's systems rebooted. External control was overridden by an unknown authority. Moments later, Virelian vessels dropped out of fold space around him. Queen Zyralith's voice came through the channel. "You were correct," she said calmly. "They tested you." Elias closed his eyes briefly. And they failed." The incident was revealed publicly. Evidence traced. Responsibility implied, never stated. The Thal Dominion lost allies overnight. The galaxy learned a new lesson. Touch a human under Virelian protection, and consequences follow. Elias stood once more before the council days later, not as an accused observer, but as a recognized representative of a rising species. Queen Zyralith stood beside him. The proposal remained unanswered, but it no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a turning point. Humanity had not gained power through force. They had gained it by surviving the pressure meant to crush them, and the galaxy was beginning to understand just how dangerous that made them. The galaxy did not calm down after the failed attempt to remove Elias. It grew quieter. And that silence frightened the old powers far more than open conflict ever could. Elias felt it everywhere he went. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. Smiles were polite but measured. Every word spoken to him carried hidden weight. He was no longer just a human diplomat. He was a symbol that could change outcomes without firing a weapon. That was dangerous. Queen Zyralith understood this better than anyone. She had ruled long enough to know that when enemies stopped shouting, they started planning. She summoned Elias to the Virelian Spire again, this time not as a debtor or a protected figure, but as a partner in strategy. They stood before a massive star map. Lines of influence glowed faintly, shifting as new data arrived. "The Thal Dominion is losing soft power," Zyralith said. "They expected fear to control the narrative. Instead, restraint exposed them." Elias studied the map. "They won't accept that quietly." "No," she agreed. "They will force a crisis that demands strength instead of reason." Elias nodded slowly. "And that's where they think humans will fail." "Exactly," Zyralith said. She turned to face him. "Tell me something, Elias Morgan. When humans face a system designed to break them, what do they do?" Elias did not answer immediately. He thought of Earth. Of history, of disasters and recoveries. "They adapt," he said. "Then they rebuild it better." That answer pleased her. The crisis came sooner than expected. A trade corridor near the Ashen Belt collapsed under mysterious circumstances. Navigation beacons failed. Shipping lanes closed. Essential resources stopped moving. Dozens of worlds were affected, most of them neutral or weak. The Thal Dominion was the first to offer a solution. A temporary security takeover. Fleets positioned themselves near the corridor, offering protection in exchange for authority. Many worlds hesitated. They had seen this before. Temporary solutions often became permanent chains. The Galactic Council stalled. Debate went in circles. Fear pushed toward force. That was when Queen Zyralith made her move. She did not deploy fleets. She called for humans. Elias stood before the council once more, this time not alone. Behind him were human engineers, analysts, and diplomats. No weapons, no armor, just tools and data. "We don't need control," Elias said clearly. "We need cooperation." Laughter echoed from some sections of the chamber. This is not a technical problem, a Thal representative said. It is a security issue. It's both, Elias replied calmly. And security without trust creates more collapse. He gestured, and the humans activated a projection. It showed a decentralized navigation network, shared control, open verification. No single empire could dominate it without everyone knowing. The corridor failed because too much authority passed through too few hands, Elias continued. Humans learned that lesson the hard way on our own world. The council watched as simulations ran. The system worked. It was slower to dominate, faster to recover. Queen Zyralith spoke. The Virelian Dominion will fund the initial deployment. Humanity will oversee neutral implementation. The room went silent. The Thal Dominion objected immediately, loudly, aggressively, but they were alone. Smaller empires supported the plan. Neutral worlds agreed. Even rivals of Virelia found it difficult to argue against a solution that denied everyone absolute control. The corridor reopened within days. No fleets moved in. No worlds were forced. The crisis ended without conquest. That was the moment the old powers realized the truth. Humanity was not dangerous because of strength. Humanity was dangerous because it offered an alternative. Pressure shifted instantly. Political attacks intensified. Subtle threats appeared, warnings disguised as concern. Messages suggesting the proposal between Elias and Queen Zyralith should be reconsidered for stability. Elias finally understood. They were not afraid of the marriage. They were afraid of the example. One evening, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking Virelian space. Stars burned cold and distant. Zyralith joined him quietly. They want me to cancel it, she said. He did not ask who they were. They believe removing the symbol will stop the change, she continued. And will it? Elias asked. She looked at him. No, but it would slow it. Elias rested his hands on the railing. If you cancel it, they'll say humans were a temporary anomaly. Yes, she said. If you don't, he continued, they'll escalate. Yes, she repeated. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Elias spoke. Then let them escalate. Humans are used to pressure. We grow under it. Zyralith studied him carefully. This path will bind your species to mine permanently. We were already bound, Elias said quietly. The moment I spoke in that hall, something shifted in her expression, not strategy. Not calculation, respect. The next council session was called under emergency authority. Everyone attended. Queen Zyralith stood at the center, Elias at her side. I have been advised to withdraw my proposal, she said openly. For the sake of balance, she paused. I refuse. Shock rippled through the chamber. This union is not about power, she continued. It is about trust. Humanity demonstrated something this galaxy has forgotten, that strength without integrity collapses. She turned slightly toward Elias. I will not weaken that message. The Thal Dominion erupted in protest. Accusations flew, threats followed. Elias stepped forward. Humans don't ask you to follow us, he said calmly. We ask you to walk with us or don't. That choice is yours. The simplicity of it unsettled them. No ultimatums, no demands. Just confidence. The council adjourned without resolution again. But the damage was done. All across the galaxy, systems began adopting human-led frameworks. Open verification, shared authority, mutual accountability. The old powers still had fleets. But fleets no longer solved everything. Late that cycle, intelligence confirmed what Zyralith had predicted. The Thal Dominion was preparing a final move. Not war, exposure. They planned to reveal classified Virelian actions from centuries past, framed to appear as betrayal. If successful, it would stain Zyralith's reputation permanently. Reputation, the same weapon they had used before. Elias looked at the data and understood the risk immediately. This could destroy you, he said. Yes, Zyralith replied, unless we do something unprecedented. She looked at him. Human transparency, she said. Elias smiled faintly. You want to tell the truth before they can twist it. Yes, even if it hurts, he added. Yes, they prepared together. When the revelation came, it was not an attack, it was a confession. Queen Zyralith addressed the galaxy directly. She acknowledged past actions, explained context, accepted responsibility where it was due, no excuses, no denial. The Thal Dominion released their evidence hours later. It changed nothing. The truth was already out. The attack failed. For the first time in galactic history, honesty defeated weaponized reputation. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had taught an ancient queen a human lesson. and she had used it to survive. As the stars turned slowly outside the spire, Elias realized something profound. The marriage proposal was no longer the center of the story. Humanity was, and the galaxy could never go back. The galaxy expected collapse after the confession. For thousands of cycles, reputation had been the strongest weapon civilizations possessed. Empires rose by protecting it and fell when it shattered. When Queen Zyralith openly admitted past actions instead of denying or hiding them, many believed her rule would not survive the cycle. They were wrong. The reaction was slow at first. Confusion spread across diplomatic channels. Analysts struggled to adjust models that had never accounted for voluntary honesty from a ruling power. The Thal Dominion waited, certain that outrage would grow. It did not. Worlds that had once feared hidden manipulation felt something unfamiliar: clarity. There were no secrets waiting to be uncovered, no shadows to threaten them later. The truth, exposed early, lost its power to harm. Queen Zyralith's reputation did not weaken, it changed. She was no longer seen as flawless, she was seen as real. That shift altered everything. Elias stood in the observation hall of the Virelian Spire, watching stars drift past in silence. For the first time since the summit, his thoughts were calm. The pressure had not disappeared, but it had settled into something manageable. "You look relieved," Queen Zyralith said as she approached. "I think the galaxy just realized it can't scare you the old way," Elias replied. She inclined her head. "They also realized it cannot scare humans at all." News arrived from every direction. The Thal Dominion lost influence rapidly. Allies withdrew quietly, unwilling to follow leaders who relied on manipulation instead of solutions. Trade routes shifted. Councils reorganized. There was no war. There was no dramatic fall, just steady irrelevance. Humanity's role expanded without announcement. Human mediators were requested in disputes once thought impossible to resolve. Human engineers were invited to help stabilize systems without demanding control. Human diplomats became trusted not because they were powerful, but because they were predictable in the best way. They told the truth. They admitted mistakes. They adjusted. Smaller species began copying human systems openly, shared governance models, transparent data networks. Cooperative security frameworks, no single empire owned them. Power began to flatten. That terrified some, inspired many. Elias received a message from Earth. The Human Council had voted unanimously. They accepted the Union, not because of protection, not because of fear. Because it aligned with who humanity was becoming. The final council session was unlike any before it. There were no accusations, no threats, just acknowledgement. Queen Zyralith stood before the galaxy one last time, Elias beside her. "This union is now formal," she said. "But understand this, humanity does not belong to the Virelian Dominion, nor do we belong to them." She placed a hand lightly over her chest. "We belong to the future we choose to build together." The High Arbiter spoke. "Humanity is hereby recognized as a stabilizing force within galactic civilization." The words carried more weight than any military title. Applause followed, not thunderous, not forced, but real. Later, away from the ceremony, Elias and Zyralith stood alone again, watching the stars they had helped reshape. "You changed the galaxy," she said. Elias shook his head. "No, we just reminded it how change works." She considered that. "Then this era will be uncomfortable." Elias smiled. "Growth usually is." The stars continued to turn. Empires still existed, power still mattered, but now something else mattered too. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, they had earned its trust. And that, the old powers finally understood, was far more powerful than fear. The future had begun.